Hey everybody, we're going to be getting going here in a little bit. Just want to let you know, load up on those pastries, load up on that coffee. Make sure you get enough, okay? You need to be powered up, get a little energy in your system. Okay, we've got a very good morning program for you guys. So this is your time to go fill up, go grab a whole plate of pastries and just get tucked in for the morning because we're going to be done at noon. No lunch today, everybody. Lunch on your own.
Good morning. It's an early morning. It's 8:30, but boy, it's early because last night was a great night, and I want to share just a little bit with you about last night before we move on to this morning's activities. Last night we had a dinner, and as part of that dinner, one of the primary things we did was share with the group here a very fortunate gift that the foundation received over the past few months. A gentleman named Mr. Larry Hardy, who lived in Memphis, who was a member of our foundation, passed away about a year ago. And when he did, he, through his will, through his estate, left the foundation a very significant gift in the amount of $250,000. And we were able last night to memorialize him. His great friend, Miss Donna Wade, who also handled the details of his estate and we worked with very closely in that process, was here. So we memorialized him and thanked him and her for that tremendous gift. And I mentioned that this morning simply because that was a result of what we call long-term planning or estate planning. You might think about the possibility, it may be difficult to give as much now as any of us would like to give, but we can do some life insurance planning or some estate planning as possibilities for leaving money for future research, particularly if this is in your family and you have children or grandchildren who might have this. That's a way to continue to make sure research continues in the future. So we just wanted to share that and thank Mr. Hardy and thank Donna again for working with our foundation in that regard. When we finished that part of our evening, we had our normal raffle, auction, and so on. During the day yesterday, Jim Sheehan, our fundraising chair, had received a message from someone about a potential $50,000 gift and challenging us to try to match that here. So Jim made that announcement, and he and others, and Dr. Osdendler, as you know, every year, the last 2 years, she's provided a piece of art that she has done that we've auctioned off, and that was part of the auction as well. But as that process happened last night, with Dr. O cheering it on and Jim working hard, this group and others who messaged us here committed $52,250 to meet that $50,000 match. So again, thanks to all of those who participated in that and who donated in that. And then on top of that, what money was raised from the auction, which we're not total on that now, but probably another 10 or 12,000. So a great meeting and a lot of generosity resulting in money for more research and more work by the foundation. And we just wanted to share that with you and thank all of those who had a part of that. Today, you're going to hear in the next few moments from all of our committee chairs. And why is that important? We're a total volunteer organization, and we need your expertise, your time, your assistance in any of these areas to move the foundation forward. So as you hear what these committees are doing, if you have a gift, if you have a desire to work in any of those areas, you are invited. We need you, and we want you. So in just a moment, we're going to turn it over to Tim and those committee chairs to do that. I'll see you for just a moment when that is over, but listen closely and welcome again this morning.
Okay, everybody. got to this day. We've got a lot of great information still to give you this morning. A little later this morning, we also have Dr. Fink is going to do a question and answer for you guys. So we've got a bunch of questions to talk with him, and that'll be a lot of fun. That's a little bit later this morning at 10 o'clock. Just want to remind everybody that we're going to have a little break between the next portion here, so you guys can make sure you officially check out, okay? Don't take the towels, just letting you know. Okay, they count those now, apparently. I guess I have to put a couple back, maybe. But anyway, we're going to have a great morning this morning. We're going to start off this morning with the committee work of the Spastic Paraplegia Foundation, and we're going to introduce our committee chairpersons, and they're going to give a little report to you to kind of tell you what we're working on with your help to help advance all of the missions of the Spastic Paraplegia Foundation. And first up this morning is Leonard Erskine, and he's the chairman of our advocacy committee. Leonard? Keep it up. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on. Got to get in there. Come on, come on, come on. All the way, all the way, all the way, all the way. You can do it. Good man. All right.
Thank you. I'm going down the stairs when I go, so you have to help me.
Yes,
I
sir.
think that's much easier.
Yes, sir.
How's that?
Wonderful. You made it.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Leonard Erskine.
Good morning. I'll be brief. I just wanted to take a couple minutes to introduce myself. I'm Leonard, part of the advocacy committee. I don't see Tina. Oh, she's back there. I got to give her a huge shout out because she does a lot of the heavy lifting. So she really should be up here with me. So it's not just a Leonard thing. So I want to give her full credit. She's really good about sending out email blasts, stays on top of everything. So please give her a round of applause, please. Thank you. And I want to point out something to you guys in your book. If you turn to page 19, I'm going to give you a couple of takeaways that I'd like you to do when you leave here. You know, maybe go up on some of the websites and see some of the cool things that we do in the advocacy committee. I also want to give a shout out to Greg and Norma for all the work that they've done with the SPF Foundation and for the hotel staff. So give them a round, please. Okay, so advocacy means a lot of different things to people. You know, I just did just like a quick search just to see, and it says advocacy is defined as any action that speaks in favor of, recommends, argues for a cause, supports, defends, or pleads on behalf of others. So I'd like to think that all of us in here are advocates, right? If we don't do this, it's not going to get done. I have PLS, but the same thing for everyone that has HSP. So it is incumbent upon each and every one of you to get involved in your local areas, your states, you know, kind of find out what's going on. On page 19 in the program, there's a couple of websites, Every Life Foundation, Open States, some of those, because we can't send out, you know, an email blast to everyone in all 50 states. That's a lot of work. But if you try to take the opportunity to find out what might be going on in your own state, I think that might be help. You might be able to reach out to legislators, you know, find out what's going on, and just kind of stay on top of anything related to rare disease, anything we can do to kind of move the ball forward for us. Most people, as you guys know, they don't know what HSP is. they don't know what PLS is. So if they don't know, how are we going to get the help that we need to help our cause? So I think that's the key takeaway. There are brochures out there. There are cards. When you guys go into your physician's offices and you have follow-up, hey, tell them about the organization. Ask them to maybe tell other patients about it. What I did when I'm at the ALS clinic, I'm like, hey, give patients my name, have people call me. Well, they can't do that because of HIPAA, privacy laws, patient health information. But what I do is I always leave pamphlets, information, so at least patients can find out. If they go on the website, contact us, we'll find them if they reach out to us. So if I could ask each and every one of you in here, when you go to your follow-up visits with your physicians, your physical therapists, say, hey, I'm involved in this great organization. And when you see newly diagnosed patients, tell them about this, because if they know, then maybe next year when they're here, you'll have new people sitting in here. I was on the elevator this morning. I don't see the lady. I think her name was Susan Makongo. She was from Missouri. First time meeting, HSP. I met a lady yesterday, Shannon from Texas, first time, has a little boy named Tanner. And I said, hey, are you enjoying the meeting? And they were just like, oh, this is so amazing, because they were first time participants and they were able to meet other people that are going through the same thing. So as advocates, I think that's important that we continue to do that. On our side, we'll continue to work with legislators. We'll continue to do things through any rare disease, NORD, anything at the state level, federal. If there are any bills moving forward through legislation, we may reach out to you guys and say, hey, can you fire off a letter? I know we had a advocacy committee earlier in the year, and they had some templates. They were easy to do. Once you fill out the information, it will populate and send it directly to the senators or congressmen in the states in which you live. And we just need to shake some bushes, make a little bit of noise. So that is my challenge to you guys. And if each and every person does that, we can raise awareness for advocacy. Does that sound good? Does that sound fair? All right. Can I count on you to do that? Huh? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I'll give you my book, unless somebody else needs it. Okay, that's fine. I got plenty of them. Yeah, I just wanted to reference that page so people would know. Yeah, I'm going to go down there. Yeah, I thought that would be easy. Yeah, a good idea might be to have a chair up here sometimes to take a little rest.
All right, everybody, thank you. Hey, coming up next is Tim Krogan with the Marketing Committee report. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for being with us. You've heard me talk for the last 72 hours or 3 weeks. I can't remember. I've lost track of time. And you sort of know what we're all about and what we do. And one of the portions one of the pieces of the puzzle we do is this annual conference. It's putting this all together, bringing all this information together for you guys. And so it's a year-long process in order to create one of these events. But we have a lot of other things in the background. For instance, the potato pants, okay? It's a way to spark interest and something that can be done for both fundraising and getting the word out, letting people understand what upper motor neuron diseases are and how they affect people, and how people who don't have them can understand what people who do have them feel like. So that's another piece under our umbrella of what we do to get that word out through social media, through anything, you know, the word of mouth, events, people. We've created this model for you guys to do your own events that helps spread that word. We just keep, the more we spread, the more people we meet, the more people understand, the better it is for everybody in the foundation. You saw in our program, you know, we also produce the Synapse newsletter that gives information of all the events and stuff, and tips and things, and a whole bunch of great information. Coming up next after this event, Greg will be putting out the annual report, which sort of sums up the year in review, also talks about all the research that we've been funding. It's a great little read. We also have the Spastic World e-blast that we can send to you guys. Technology is real good. You know, print is kind of moving its way to the side, okay? And so people are more connected through email and stuff. So you get those notes from us. We're now doing, creating the podcast sort of model. And we got Kim Sanchez helping us with that. And she's been collecting a lot of interviews with you guys here during this weekend. So those are going to be produced and put out onto our YouTube channel and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and whatever's out there, okay? I mean, it's out there. They're all over the place. And you guys will get to see it, and other people will get to see it. Once again, more information, more people understand what we're doing, what we're going through. We're meeting more people, and we're also, I wish this didn't happen, but we're also finding new members, people who don't know about us, about the foundation, who are searching for answers and stuff, and it's our way to reach out to them. We've also tried to get information to neurologists. We give you information that you can take to your neurologist and to your doctors. Those pamphlets that are out there at the registration table, take those with you, hand them out. Anytime you see somebody, you say, this is what it's all about. Here's the foundation. Look at us. Look it up. We are a repository of years and years and years of information and research and data that's on our website that people can read and understand what people are going through and make that connection. Drive the people to our website. That's where all that information is. We also have the SPF store, okay? You know you don't have enough SPF merchandise and logos on stuff, okay? Go to the Redbubble store. You can put our logo on cups, Christmas ornaments, mouse pads, if anybody still uses those, and all these other kind of creative things. There's a whole bunch of different items, a lot of different clothing items, from hoodies and stuff like that you can put those logos on. And a lot of the logos that we have out there are designed by members like you. Somebody had an idea, got creative, sent it up to us. We took a look at it, and we put it out, and then it ends up on a shirt. Pretty cool system. That's very participatory. We like doing that stuff. We also deal with Awareness Week throughout, well, every day is awareness for us, but we also have Awareness Week in August, okay, when people do a lot of their 5Ks, even though we've expanded that out from March through October to make so people don't have to do it in the heat of the summer, okay, and especially your Tampa guys down here. Man, this is some serious heat down here. So you can do these throughout these things. The way is to get the message out to everybody, okay? And we also do the SPF talks. You guys who participated in any of those? We have people, wonderful, lots of hands. People come in, we have special guests that talk about therapies. We talk about, we've had physical therapists. We've had people talk about mental health. We've also given you information that way of what we're doing and what's going on. So, very good things. We've got a lot of irons in the fire, and our way is just to keep you informed. And remember why we are zebras, right? Zebras is the mascot for rare diseases, and boy, do we fit that model. okay? So we want to make sure that you guys get the word out. You tell people, send them to the website, give them information. And, you know, we're trying to do as much as we can to get the word out and speak on your behalf to millions and millions and billions of people around the planet. So that's what we do, as well as putting this big conference on for you guys, so you get together and meet and greet and have all this fellowship with all these other members, just like yourself. So Tina's given me the wrap it up sign, because that's what she does. So we're moving right along next. So coming up next is going to be Jim Sheehan, who is our fundraising committee chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Sheehan. You want to just
Exercise in.
want to go to the side, or you want to stand?
I'll go to the side, so that's okay.
There you go.
Good morning. So we had a good dinner last night. I think hopefully everyone that's here was here last night. We had a little event to try to raise some money, and thank goodness for all of those guys and girls that contributed. We now have just over $52,000 that we raised last night. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Amazing that kind of money can be raised in, what, a half hour? It was just tremendous. So again, thank you. If you didn't get a chance to give and you want to give, we can do that today. Or you can do it online, send a mail a check, however you want to do it, we can still do that. So wanted to share that. Amazing too, our cheerleader, Dr. Osdendler, who's a researcher, she actually contributed as well. So that's just amazing. So heads up, we actually have raised just over $525,000. So, well, actually plus 50. So what's that, 575? So that's about a 5% increase from last year. So we're ahead of the game last year. That's awesome. If you haven't had a chance, please look at page 24 in your booklet at some point. I'll do it right now. But this lists all the types of ways you can support the financially and otherwise the foundation. There's all kinds of events on there. So please look at that and see if there's something that you can help out with. Currently, we have the 5K going on. That's actually May 1st through October 31st. It's called a run, walk, and roll, and that's supposed to try to encompass most things. The big thing is it's a way to get physically active and raise money for the foundation. So if you think you can't run, walk, and roll, pick your event. Pick your exercise. Last year, we had somebody that rode. We had golfers. We had tennis players. We had swimmers. Pick a physical activity that works for you, and try to do something for an hour. If you can't do something for an hour, do it for 10 or 15 minutes one day and then skip some. Do whatever works for you. But it's just an opportunity for you to be physically fit and then again raise money for the foundation. So don't let the 5K title scare you away saying you can't do that, because surely there's a lot of things you can do. There's also adaptive sports. Look up adaptive sports in your area, and you might be amazed at the things: rock climbing, water skiing, snow skiing, tennis, pickleball. Where's Cece? Pickleball. There's all kinds of things you can do. So don't think that because you have a disability that you can't do what you may have liked to do in the past. Excuse me. Expenses for the registration for this conference are kind of expensive, of course. But the bad news is that the cost is more than what you paid to be here. So with that in mind, please know that we appreciate you being here. We hope this exceeded your expectations, but the money to pay for registration does not go towards research. This is just to fund this event personally. So hopefully in time, this rest of this year, for those that have not made a donation, hopefully you'll have time to find a way to make a donation to the foundation. And then also, reach out to family and friends. It's not just you, it's family and friends. Share your story. Let all your family and friends know what you deal with, what you have to deal with as you stay to perform and do your stuff. And then also, for those of you who are employed, check with your employer about a matching opportunity. Several of the people that contributed last night are going to get their bosses or their employers to match their gifts. So don't forget about that. So we have, back to research, we have a list. Let me back up. Back last fall, we received 25 research grants from researchers. The Scientific Advisory Board has just gone through all that process, and they've given us a list of 8 grants that they seem to be the most fundable. So next, I guess July the 9th is our next board meeting, so we'll be getting together then to find out which of those grants we're going to fund. So look for an announcement probably mid-July about the grants that we're going to fund. It'll be an exciting time to move forward and go with that. Let's see what else. Oh, Tim mentioned the brochures and stuff outside. There's a trifold green brochure, and there's also some small little postcards that has our website address, all our contact information. So take those, give those out to your neurologist, your physical therapist, anybody that's medically related to you, family and friends, whatever. Spread the word so that they can know more about us. I think that's all I have. I'll be around the rest of the day. If you have any questions or comments, if you want to help with fundraising, provide suggestions or criticize us, that's fine too, whatever. So anyway, all right, next up is Tracy Hood with Education Ambassadors.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, wanted to just say, first and foremost, this has been an amazing weekend. I am thrilled and honored to stand here today with you to speak about our ambassador program and the value add of all members to the SP Foundation. So as you know, my name is Tracy Hood. I have SPG 5A. And I was officially confirmed through genetic testing in 2016. I attended my first annual conference last year, and I knew I wanted to be involved with the foundation. I saw where I could add value. My husband and I made the decision to go to St. Louis about 3 weeks before the conference, and we made that decision with the encouragement from Christine Hendrickson, who is another Florida ambassador in my area. So she had hosted a 5K, and I hadn't seen anything like that before. So my husband actually said, hey, did you get this email? So there's somebody that's doing a 5K for HSP in Palm Harbor. And I'm like, what? And so I reached out to Christine, and she's like, yeah, come. And I was like, all right, it was on my bucket list. Let me see if I could do a 5K. And so that was one of it. And the other part was, I wanted to meet somebody like me who is going through that same experience. So Christine hosted a 5K. It was her and Andrew and Alan and Kathy Angel and Ron and I. And that's it. It's just the six of us. But we walked the park for like 2 hours and got to know each other, right? And with that, there was this encouragement to get involved, come to the annual conference. And honestly, this is all about making a human connection, right? So this is where an ambassador comes into play and why ambassadors are so important. So let's start with why. Why do ambassadors add value? We have ambassadors who are an extension of the foundation to make that human connection with members like all of us, meeting others who are all on this same journey. And having a rare disease is incredibly isolating. I think we can all agree with that. And so finding somebody to talk to who is sharing your experience is such a source of comfort. So what does an ambassador do? An ambassador reaches out to new members in their state or region. We send regular communications to members on what's happening with the foundation. We may try to arrange gatherings, whether in person or Zoom calls with members close by or interested in connecting. Our Florida ambassador team was in regular contact with Norma throughout the year to offer any support for this conference in our home state. We build relationships and we build our own community. So for me, a little selfishly, I'm planning to host my second annual 5K, third weekend in September. Selfish plug for any of you locals who new friends that are interested in participating. And even if you can't walk a 5K or bike a 5K, feel free to come out and just be present and participate in your own way. So I'll be sending out a communication in the next couple of weeks or so to kick things off for that. So what is the commit for being an ambassador? So if you are interested in becoming an ambassador, what does that commitment look like? You attend monthly ambassador calls. You send emails and talk to individuals when they reach out. You spread the word about all of the amazing work that's happening with the foundation. And what you need to remember, and I know that you've heard Greg say this weekend, this organization is all volunteer. So 97 and 98% of the money raised goes straight to research. And that benefits all of us, right? So the time and effort to keep this machine running for all of us, to benefit us, comes from the passion that we all share in finding therapies and a cure. It takes a village of individuals willing to donate their time and their effort for this cause. So if you have any interest in becoming an ambassador for your state, I am happy to chat with you, as are other ambassadors that are here with us today. And I would like to recognize and thank Dina Lampierre, who is our ambassador chair, who is unable to attend the conference this year, and to Jackie Wellman, who receives all of our new member information and shares that contact information with state representatives. So I'd also like to thank each and every ambassador that was here this weekend and that is present today. So thank you all for being here, and safe travels home. So I have a shirt. I actually got this off of Zulily maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I wear it to the gym with my personal trainer. She personally likes it when it's a leg day, a strength day. So it says, "Shut up, legs, we got this." And it's not, I'm going to be like Tiger Woods every Sunday for conferences. This is like my mantra. So here we go. Shut up, legs, we got it.
Hey guys, coming up next is John Cobb, who's the chairman of our research committee. But while he's on his way up here, I just want to say a couple of things. We talked to you earlier about the potato pants. We have 3 pair of those out in the lobby. Anybody want to take a pair home, please do, okay? We want you to take them home so you can use them if you want them. Please take them, okay? Okay, and also, there are some great towels out there that say, "Raise Up," okay? And these are pretty nice from the Bayfront Health Group and the Tampa Bay Rays. So make sure you grab one of these too, okay? I'm not going to toss them to you because I can't throw a curveball. So anyway, John Cobb, everybody.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Tim. So, yeah, what a wonderful weekend. It is the most memorable weekend of the year for me. Love seeing all of you and seeing all the new faces as well, and building the community. So I am here to talk about our SPF research and how we transform your generous donations into progress towards a cure. And also, you know, what would be great is if I could summarize those dense 2 days of research as well. So by the end of this, you'll understand everything that was said this weekend. Next slide, please. Thank you. So yes, I'm John. I've been on the foundation for, oh gosh, that's crazy, like 10, 11 years now. But it's been an awesome journey. I am now the co-chair of the Research Grant Committee, along with my wife, Jody, and she's the real brains behind all of this. I'm just sort of the front. She is a geneticist, and many of you have probably heard this story. Some of you new may not have, but she was representing her company, Invitae, at the 2016 annual conference in Chicago, and I saw her, and we started chatting, and and now Now we got that little guy right there. Sorry. So yes, Jamie Westbrook, and I know many of you chatted about it already, but Jamie is now a year and a half. He is the product of the SPF conference. So many great things happening here. Next slide, please. So the research grant process, what does that look like? It's actually it's very simple. So this slide is basically everything I'm going to talk about today. It is 4 components. We first send out a request for proposal, so asking researchers to submit research to us that we are willing to fund, and that goes out to currently about 1,000 different email addresses that we have, and we're always building that list. And if you know any researchers by chance, please send them our way so we can also include them. We also post that on our website, so anybody that is going through our website can get that information there. So then we'll give researchers some time to submit those proposals, and that'll be roughly 3 months, give or take. But we want to gather those, get them ready to pass off to our scientific advisory board. And that is really the key part of this. The scientific advisory board, they're the ones who evaluate the research. So they, we have, this past round, we've had, I think, 25 proposals that were reviewed by our scientific advisory board. We'll give them about, I don't know, a month or 2, depending on the schedule. And they'll go through with, so NIH-based scoring mechanism to evaluate each proposal. And then they provide those back to Jody and I, and we organize that information, do that final scoring. We will hold some conversations and some further evaluation if there are any like tied scores or anything that is sort of on the fringe. You know, we have a certain amount of money, as Jim's mentioned, that we want to put to research each year, and sometimes some proposals can be ranked pretty closely. So we want to make sure that our SAB is thoroughly, reviewing these proposals, making sure that the absolute best ones are put forward. Then finally, once we have those scores in place, our board will vote, and then we reward those proposals. And also, as Jim said, we are doing that next board meeting. So more information to come on that soon. And next slide, please. So yes, the Scientific Advisory Board, that is chaired by Dr. Moretti, and he was here last year, so some of you may have chatted with him, but he's done an excellent job of helping to manage this process, working with the entire Scientific Advisory Board to make sure we're doing things properly and efficiently and handling this research as it should be handled. And he's helping to build that team as well. So we have 17 members on the SAB right now, and that is for across HSP and PLS. They are experts in a number of different fields. So yeah, neurology, genetics, imaging, and pharmacology, and many others. So it's important to keep that diversification of skill sets and make sure that we're matching up the sort of the content of each proposal with SAB members who are skilled in that area. And then the another exciting piece here is that we've always been doing basic research. So basic research being kind of the core science of, hey, why does HSP do what it does, and what are all those like biological components that need to be addressed, and what changes when you change this or that, the other thing. Then getting to clinical trials, that would be a different type of proposal. The Centers of Excellence the CERN is one example of that. So that was a big project, as you know, that we funded last year, and we're very excited about that process. We're receiving other proposals for other components of clinical trial based research and stuff that we can fund. So we need to continue to build our scientific advisory board, and we're continuing to refine that process and improve it. But I think we've come a long way in the past 20 years. So I'll show here shortly. Some of the earlier grants. But I guess the last piece here is that we want to make sure too that with our researchers there can sometimes be a conflict of interest, right? And we want to make sure too that the folks who are submitting proposals are obviously not the folks who are reviewing proposals. So that is why the SAB is probably I don't want to say an unknown group. All of their names are listed on our website, but they don't. They actually have done some research proposals in the past for SPF, but many of them are not regular contributors to the SPF research pool. But and then yes, conflicts of interest. Sometimes there have been scenarios, even recently, where one of the reviewers was involved with a project and they couldn't review that grant. So just a little bit of detail about our scientific advisory board and how that works. Next slide, please. So yes, this here a little snapshot of the beginning. Our wonderful Dr. Fink with a $40,000 grant for the natural history of primary lateral sclerosis and hereditary spastic paraplegia. And it's funny because, we are still working on natural history. Natural history is a huge part of clinical trials. So, it takes a lot of work, and, some things are not solved overnight, and these are pieces of the puzzle that we're still contributing to. And as you can see, also a mouse model for HSP. So again, core components of our research process that we continue to build on over time. Next slide, please. So since the beginning, we have a little over 11 million in total funding. And, that's a huge impact on the research community for HSP and PLS, because a lot of those grants are seed grants. They are going to sort of unestablished researchers, researchers that we are bringing into the field and trying to grow the base for, who's helping us make it closer to a cure. That's across 76 grants total, and again, we will be adding to that number very shortly. Next slide, please. And here is a quick snapshot of just one way to look at some of the progress towards HSP and PLS. This is, actually there's a similar slide that was shown yesterday. The search criteria was slightly different. But as you can see, there's been a wonderful increase in published research towards HSP and PLS over the years. Yeah, I see that tiny little dip in 2023. I wouldn't be too worried about that. I think that's just a little sort of date cutoff or something like that. But it's been wonderful progress. But one thing I want to mention here is that I know a lot of folks are curious about the more the specifics about research. Like, hey, well, okay, this shows us progress, but what else? Like, tell me what is actually happening. So, as the on the research committee, some items that we know are high priority, and I'm sure you guys would agree. We want to start building out a better sort of map or some better details around the research progress, both what SPF has done, but also generally across the research community. So we can see on our website, we do have all of the research that we've published there, but even titles of research can be a little tricky to truly digest what's happening. So we want to make that a little bit clearer. We want you guys to feel good about your donations and that you know exactly what your money has gone to and what it'll continue to go towards. Yeah, and I think that is everything. Next slide, please. There you go. So there's some pictures of our wonderful Jamie. I had a few people ask me for pictures, so figured I'd throw them up here and let you guys enjoy. Thank you. How much time do I have left?
As much as you need.
30 minutes? I can
Yes.
do that. You guys want to do 30 minutes?
Of baby pictures.
Baby, yeah, we can just, let me throw up my
Just scroll
phone
through
on there.
those.
We'll just
We can do 30 minutes of
go
pictures.
through them.
We'd love to do that, but
I mean, are there any questions? If I can answer them, I don't know. If not, no worries. But
you did a great job.
cool. All right. Thank you.
All right. Hey, everybody, on that note, we are going to take a break. So in 30 minutes, we want you back here so we can get started with our Dr. Fink presentation, his question and answers. You've got 30 minutes. Take a little break. There's still a lot of pastries out there and coffee and stuff. So load up, fuel up, get ready to go. And then we'll see you back in 30 minutes, and we will continue with our program. All righty, everybody. See you in 30.
And as you hear Tim say, we're taking a break on this last day because all of our folks who are in hotel rooms have a certain checkout time, and we want to make sure that if our last session goes a little long that they don't have any problem with checkout. So folks are going to take a half an hour or so to check out, and we will be back here at 9:45. But before I leave right now, I just want to say to you again, you've had an opportunity to hear about the work of the committees, and you may think, I don't have much to add, I can't do much. Well, every one of the members of these committees, all the chairs, everyone are volunteers, and this is just a great volunteer effort to make important things happen. And you see over our history, over $11 million in research, and we're trying to continue that trend and hone in on research that will make a difference, find a treatment, we hope find cures. So a little report on the operation and the work of the foundation, and if there's a committee that you think you might could be part of, be interested in being part of, interested in learning more about, please let us know and we'll get you connected with that committee chair to talk about those possibilities. Again, we're going to take a 30-minute break. We'll be back here about 9:45 Eastern Time, and the last session we'll have will be Dr. Fink, who will have some things I'm sure to share with us, and he'll take a lot of questions. So join us back for that time. It's a great time, a way to end the conference, and we'll see you at 9:45. Well, good morning again, and we're about to begin this last session of our annual conference, and you guys always know Dr. Fink is always the last on our agenda because he wants to do that and kind of bring things to a conclusion. He'll be sharing some remarks, I'm sure. We've got a number of questions that folks here have put on paper that we'll be asking him, as many of those as we can. So we want to thank you for being with us this weekend. We hope that you've gotten some information that's helpful to you. We hope you've learned things about the research that's occurring and some of the research plans in our future. You certainly learned about the financial fundraising that is going on and some great fundraising that happened last night. All of this happens and is done by many, many volunteers who work a lot of days a week to try to pull these things together to work toward those treatments and cures for you, me, and all of our members. We hope you've heard as you've listened to the committees an area that you might have a talent in, that you might have an interest in, that you can get involved in with us. We want to invite you to do that. Please let us know by phone or by email, and we'll try to get you plugged in with the committee chair that is working in that area. We want to thank all of our doctors and researchers who've been with us. We again want to thank all of our Tampa area sponsors who've come in, set up booths, provided resources for us to do this. I want to particularly thank our Florida team, so many local Floridians who are attached to SPF who've helped us with planning and putting on this convention. We thank all of them so much. All of the folks who worked our booth, our Missouri team, our Nashville team, helping out in so many ways. So we're very thankful for all of that work. As we move toward closing, I want to remind you that if you've missed part of this weekend, that you've been in this feed but you've not caught it all, you've had to miss something, in a week or two, everything that we've done and recorded here will be on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to go on that and watch all of this again. Take an extra set of notes so you might find something again that helps you in dealing with your daily life and working toward the future with you and your family. Tell doctors and nurses and others in your family who need to know about what SPF does and about these diseases. Turn them on to those YouTube recordings so that they might see and learn and benefit from the work that's done here in the foundation and at this annual convention. One question that you might have that many have had here is, where will the convention be next year? Well, normally by this time we know where it will be and we're sharing that. But this year, because of some of the proposals that we're looking at as far as research-related work and partnering, we haven't been able to make a final decision about that for next year because some of that research-related activity could impact that. We hope in our board meeting in July to be able to come to a conclusion, and as soon as we know that, we will get that information out so that you'll know what city that will be in. Once that's decided, then we will go to that city and find the perfect, or as best we can, the close to perfect location hotel-wise to do that. And I want to encourage you in this regard, if you're at home and you're watching this or watching it on the YouTube channel and you'd like to come to our annual conference next year, sometime later in the year, once we've got a hotel lined up and contracted with, we'll put that information on our website. We'll do e-blast to share that. When you know where that hotel is, if you think you have any interest in going, immediately call and make reservations there, because that hotel block fills up and then those rates go up. So if you think you might have an interest, get an early reservation in so that you'll have a room on that block rate and save yourself some money. We work really hard to keep the registration fees and the cost of attending as low as we can, because we want all of you who have been diagnosed with either of these conditions to be able to be with us, participate, and learn about the things that we're doing and the things that you need to know as you deal with HSP or PLS. So with that, it's been a great pleasure to spend these last 2.5 days with you. You've got our email address, you have our phone number. We'd be glad to hear from you and try to assist in any way that we can with the things that you're dealing with. God bless you. Thanks again. And when I say goodbye, this conference will finish as soon as Dr. Fink answers questions and Tim says goodbye. So we'll see you next year. Thanks a lot.
Keep it informal.
Want me to get that for you?
No,
You
please.
just said 25 push-ups.
I know.
You can-
Don't watch. Don't watch.
Hey, everybody, we're glad we had this nice little break. We had that nice little, exciting little push-up challenge up here for fundraiser. You might see that video a little bit later on one of our YouTube digital platforms somewhere, who knows? Keep an eye out for that. But we want to get you going here this morning with Dr. Fink. He's gonna do his presentation. We're gonna take some questions. Hopefully he'll give some answers. It's going to be a really, really wonderful morning, a nice finish to the Spastic Paraplegia Foundation's annual conference this year. So just kind of be ready. We'll see where this is going to go. Just like me, we're making it up as we go along. So this is the best part. This is the best part. So ladies and gentlemen, Dr. John Fink.
Here, you close that with me, would you? Just close it up. I didn't close it. Oh, I don't need that. Okay. Good morning. I'm glad to be here. I see a lot of familiar faces, and some people I just met for the first time. We're learning, I'm learning, about primary lateral sclerosis and HSP. I'm learning. As a community, we're learning. As individuals, we're learning. So I'm not sure if this is as much a conference as it is like a library, a source of information, a source of information exchange. A library, you get information, and it's nowadays a place to exchange information. But it's also, we're at, when you hear in the past couple days all these talks about molecular advances, and we're doing that in our lab, working towards gene therapy and animal models and stem cell work, and we do all that, some of it. And you hear all the very high-tech, cutting-edge molecular science towards a treatment. Well, at simultaneously, with the high-tech, molecular, cutting-edge, we're also at the very fundamental aspects of HSP and PLS. Fundamental, like how does a person walk? How does the condition progress? What causes it to begin at a certain time? Is it ever not present? Did it begin at age 30, but it was actually present at age 2, and this got worse or more manifest? These are fundamental questions. And so, as many people know here, participated. We're trying to measure walking. Well, that sounds like something we would have done 50 years ago. Well, there are books written about how to measure walking. And I've read at least one of those books and dozens of those papers on how to measure walking. We know how to measure walking. But which way, among the 100 ways to measure walking, is this one that's suitable, not for 3 people in a gate lab at a university, but for 300 or 600 or 1,000 people around the world? Not just once, but multiple times. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, repeat it again, 3 months later, repeat it again, 3 months later. So we get day-to-day variation, season-to-season variation. Walking changes day to day. Are you tired? Did you sleep? Anyways, this is like fundamental question that's not ready yet to be used for clinical trials. My point is, we have to grow the scientific part. We also have to grow the fundamental, hands-on clinical assessment part. But besides that, there's another part we have to grow, and that's the community building. We're here, SPF exists, and the fantastic product of SPF is that there's a community, there are people are not as isolated, there's hope, not just promise, but tangible hope based on deliverable products of research and so forth. So there's a community, and that community is the product of SPF, but that's still a work in development. We have to expand this community. This community is vibrant and strong and small. There are probably 20 or 30,000 people in the United States with HSP and several thousand, maybe more, with PLS. We don't know how many people with PLS. It's definitely under-recognized. And so as strong and as vibrant and as important and as productive as this community is, we need to grow the community. We need to grow the community in every way. I would say that most rare diseases, not every rare disease, and HSP and PLS certainly are one of these, they are enriched in their clinical reports and the scientific publications are enriched in people who have access to university medical centers. Okay, so access to university medical centers around the world, not just in the United States, in Africa, in South America, and wherever. The rare diseases are most reported in individuals who have access to university medical centers. Well, access to university medical centers is a barrier. It's not, I'm aware of that barrier. It's not a bias against participation, but it is who gets their neurologic care at a university medical center is a subset of everybody who has that problem. And so I'm aware that we need to grow our community. We need to grow our community. Am I teaching or preaching? It's a very fine line. I think I'm preaching. Amen. Okay, so we don't want to preach. Preaching from me is I don't have any basis to be preaching. So we can edit that out here. But anyway, no, we can't actually. That's the problem. So anyway, the point is we need to grow our community, especially, and recognize what are the limiting factors for being as inclusive of everybody who's not here. Why aren't the other people here? Do they not know about us? Well, it's not us and them. They are us. They're part of us, but we just haven't met them yet. And our research will be strengthened. Not just our research, the clinical care and the support we give each other will be strengthened. So, anyway, I'm not sure how to do this, but I'm aware of the need to do this, to grow the SPF community. Okay, let's see. So we talked about the value of high-tech, cutting edge. We talked about the value of hands-on, basic clinical methods. We talked about the need to grow and the value of the organization. The value of the organization can't be understated. Actually, you know, I mean, this year I came back from a conference in Germany, and previous year I went there as well. And previous year I went to the Spastica Paraparesis Familiar, which is the Spanish HSP group, and I've talked to a group in Brazil the previous year, and I spoke at the group in Canada the previous year. So we have Canada, Brazil, France, Germany, Italy, South Korea, all kinds of groups, China, Japan, that I have directly participated in. And I will tell you, SPF is the leader, in my opinion, the most, certainly the largest from a consumer standpoint. I won't say patient standpoint. You're not patients, you're participant. You're not, patient is a relationship of somebody in a clinic, doctor-patient, that's a relationship. But here, this is not a doctor-patient relationship. This is a member participation or in an organization. And this is probably the largest member organization of HSP in the world. And that's not an accident. That's not an accident. Actually, that's not the intent. It's not the intent to be the largest. That's not the intent. The intent is to be the most valuable for the member participation and the most valuable from a research initiation. That's the goal. And it's met with such enthusiasm that the result is the growth and so forth. So the point is, we are poised to expand the leadership of this group to those other groups around the world to work together, And we are on a research basis, and we have an opportunity to work together from a member-to-member relationship to grow SPF, the United States, to the Euro HSP, to increase our collaborations with the Tom Wallig Foundation in Germany and so forth and so on, all these other organizations, that we need to develop these greater harmony, greater synergy between our groups to promote research, knowledge, care. Okay, so that's my prepared comments. If there's no other questions, we're done? More? Okay, so that's all I have to say. That's all I can, prepared comments. I won't take any more time if anybody has any questions. Oh, I want to say, and I'll probably say this 5 times, because it's a question and answer period. I cannot give medical advice from this podium. Not because I'm prohibited, but because it's just not, the questions are too personal, specific, and they don't need a superficial answer. I can't be precise, and to give otherwise it'd be superficial, and I'd be like saying, oh, well, it's probably something. That kind of superficial response is not going to be helpful. So I have to be, I answer in general, and people who know me, which is many people, they'll say, well, the problem with Dr. Fink is that once you give him the microphone, he just does not stop talking. That's not the only problem. But we're going to leave the others aside. But so I try to expand on a question to move it from a personal question into a general question, because often it applies to other people as well. So anyways, I'll try to answer specifically. Anybody have any questions? Yes, there's a hand in the back of the room.
Is it working?
Yes.
I recall that a couple of years ago, and I think it is your philosophy, that there will be, and I remember you saying there will be a cure in your lifetime. Now, I'm of the age where by the time it probably comes along, it might not benefit me, but it might benefit my children. Do you still believe there will be a cure in your lifetime?
Okay, so you heard the question about belief and cure and lifetime. So I'll put it like this, and I'm going to answer you on a sort of a, there's a linguist here among us. But anyways, I'll say, I'm going to take the word belief out of this discussion, because my personal belief is irrelevant in this discussion. So I'm going to challenge this word belief. Belief is a personal, spiritual, but I'm going to replace that word with, do I think? Because I can talk about thinking, which is based on what I've learned, what I've read, what I've assessed intellectually, which is separate from a belief. And I knew, no, you didn't want to go down this way. It's too late. But, so we're not going to talk about my belief. We're going to talk about what I think. And what I think is based on what I know and project in the future and make generalization. And so, the answer to that is yes. Do I think that we are that there's a number of different approaches to developing treatments for these conditions that are in clinical trials and approaching clinical trials? There are a number in this country and throughout the world. I talked with an individual yesterday who told me about this drug that's being tried in ALS, and I did not know about this. And now it has shown some benefit for speech in ALS, and he's hoping to get compassionate use to try it for speech in PLS. And I wrote back, I'd like to try it also in PLS as a compassionate use. My point is, for speech. Now, the point is, do I think that there will be treatments for these conditions in my lifetime? And the answer to that is yes, because I know that there are other treatments that are currently being tried in HSP, in PLS, and in related conditions. And actually, one important place of, so for example, there's Dr. Ibrahim El-Fakhari mentioned the gene therapy trials for one form of HSP. Well, there are other gene therapy trials that are approaching other forms of HSP that are some are closer than others, but many that are in development. 11, 7, 4, 15, 5. These are either in various stages of development. So, will they work? I can't tell you. The Wright brothers' plane didn't fly very far the first time out, okay? But I think the Wright brothers' plane was 1911, something, right? 1903? 1903, yeah, thank you. But it was already in use in World War I. Planes were. So, yeah, 1903, thank you. So the point is, the first iteration of these therapies may not be very effective. That's okay. We don't necessarily expect, tremendous success with the first product. At any rate, but what form will it come in? This is the question. Will the treatments come all at once, that you open up and suddenly everything's good? Will it come as something that's slowly developed, that's better and better and better? Will that, I can't tell you that. Will it come in my lifetime? Well, I hope so. Okay, short answer.
Dr. Fink, we hope so as well. And allow me just for a second to go back to what you were talking about in terms of international relationships. I want our membership to know that on an ongoing daily, weekly basis. Well, we're trying to expand that with every opportunity. The week before we came, Norma and I participated in a call with the Euro.
HSP Euro.
Yeah.
Euro HSP.
In the past couple of years, I don't know how many of you guys participate with us from time to time on SPF talks, but probably a year and a half ago or so, we did a series of SPF talks and Zoom meetings with some Brazilian doctors and researchers. So as Dr. Fink says, this is happening all across the world, and we're working daily on your behalf, trying to expand that, believing as Dr. Fink that as we expand research worldwide, we need to expand patient membership involvement worldwide so that we can support what that research is doing. So just wanted you to know that. We're working in that direction for you. And Dr. Fink, I know Tim may have a question up here in just a second, but let me, real quickly, I've got one that may be a difficult one for you to answer.
Uh-oh.
How is Dr. Fink so handsome?
Well, so okay.
I don't know who asked that question, but I thought
okay, you want the truth? The truth is that I wrote that question.
Check. Okay, we have a question from the audience here in the front.
And I would just like to say, do you believe you are really handsome, or do you think you are really handsome? Now, my question is kind of an extension of Greg's, and that is, do you see artificial intelligence playing a role not just in increasing research and everything, but increasing this coordination among different countries to maybe access tens of thousands of more?
Oh, 100%. 100%. In fact, with the yes is the short answer. But so, for example, with the SPF CERN, which is a very important collaboration, one of the important goals is to develop standards for evaluation, not just for clinical assessments, but for the mechanics of how data is stored, so that all centers store data in the same way in the United States, and harmonizing our data collection with those in Europe. So this will allow, like when all the data is collected in the same way, using the same, we had instructions about how to test tone, and so the mechanics of how the exam should be done and how should it be scored. Okay, so data has to be collected, not just clinical data, but the MRI data, the imaging and everything has to be collected the same way, so that then we can use machine learning to, not just only for that purpose, but we can then use machine learning, AI, to say, oh, did you know that this parameter, age of onset, correlates with this finding on MRI scan? For example, or correlates with this finding on a gene test, for example. So we may not know these things now, but computers, they work tirelessly. And I'm not going to say smarter, but they work at a rate that is unachievable. So yes, it's a short. Now the other thing is not just for data analysis AI, but for developing new rehabilitation strategies. For how we can watch someone walk and study their walking, and then use an AI-guided rehabilitation strategy. So not just for data analysis, but actually, at the research conference I attended, Cure Cure AP4 conference. That's one example, but there are other examples where AI is used to analyze molecular data to pick which potential drugs should be developed. So there's drug development, rehabilitation strategies, harmonizing data for analysis clinically. All of that will or does use AI, 100%.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fink. We've got another question up here in the front
Yes,
row.
ma'am.
Hi. So I've been hearing a lot about gene therapy
Sure.
treatment and possible cures or treatments. Does that mean that it stops progression and the person, the patient, remains where they are? Or is there a chance to get better?
Okay, so here's the point. We don't know yet. We want both. We want to prevent the condition, we want to stop the condition, we want to reverse the condition. Okay, we want to slow it down, we want to stop it, we want to reverse it. The goal is all of that. Now, I don't know we don't know if one approach will do that. I can't tell you. Like, for example, let's say a gene therapy today stops the condition from developing. That's wonderful. So a 2-year-old that has a gene mutation that shows a little sign, it might stop the condition. That would be one concept. Would that same treatment be useful for a 60-year-old? I can't tell you. I don't know. But there may be other, so I can't tell you if that same treatment would work. And I don't want to say because I can't tell you, that means I have knowledge that I'm biased one way or the other. The short answer is, I don't know. We don't know.
So you don't know if a wheelchair user could walk again?
Could benefit from that. I can't tell you. Now, the other part is that when we talk about gene therapy, or any therapy, gene therapy is a variety. You can change the way a gene is regulated. We can change the splicing. That's a molecular processing of the gene. We can change the splicing. We can override a stop so that it's supposed to stop, and we can read through the stop. We can add a new gene. We can reduce the presence of a toxic gene. There's a number of gene therapy approaches, but among the approaches, we think about, it's not simply that gene therapy is one approach. You have a mutant gene and you're adding the normal gene. That's a common concept. That is one approach, and that's maybe the most common discussed, but it's not the only approach. But
Okay.
we can put other products in that treatment besides the correct gene. So for example, what if we load that vector up, not with the correcting gene, but with some nerve growth stimulating factor? Okay? So now we're adding using gene therapy not to deliver the correct copy of the gene, or maybe not only to deliver the correct copy of the gene, but we're also adding one or more genes that produce nerve growth promoting factors. Okay? So now we say, okay, well, we got the gene we're loading up the payload into this vector. We're going to put the correct copy in that would hopefully stop the condition from getting worse. I'm just discussing possibilities. We're going to put a gene in there that's got the correct copy of the gene that maybe will stop the condition from getting worse. And we have to add in other genes that are going to promote healing and recovery and regeneration of the damaged nerves. Okay? So when you say, would gene therapy help? Sure. I don't know, could it help? I would say absolutely. What is the basis for me saying that? Well, in some animal models and in some stem cell models, gene therapy does help in those animal models. Okay? So absolutely, it clearly helps in some models. Now, what do we have to do in people? I'm not sure what's going to be in the payload of that gene vector. But do I think it could help someone? Of course it could. I think there's every reason to think it could.
What's the delivery method for gene therapy? Is it like
The most common, there's a couple approaches, but the ones that are currently used, so for example, there are genetic eye diseases, for which there's gene therapies that are being used in the clinic today, and they're just injected directly into the eye. This is not, genetic eye disease is as big a condition as the genetic HSPs and PLSs. It's very many different conditions. But for some types, at least one or two types, there's gene vectors that are injected into the eye so that's a direct injection into the tissue. In the case of HSP and PLS, we'd probably not put it into the brain or spinal cord. It would today, the current concept today, although that's possible, the current concept would probably be injected into the spinal fluid. Like where you have a spinal tap and they take out fluid, well, they would probably take out 5 or 10 milliliters and put back in 5 or 10 milliliters, whatever the number is, 15. And in the fluid they put back, there would be the vectors that contain the gene, and it's carried up to the brain and the spinal cord, and it gets into the brain. And so that would be, now it's also possible to do direct injection into the brain. It's also possible to do direct injection into the spinal cord.
Intravenous?
Intravenous is another approach. Sure. Yes, all these are approaches. The reason that I'm not favoring, but that I'm more knowledgeable about the spinal fluid approach is because when you put it in the vein, well, now it goes to the liver, and lungs and other tissues soak it up, and less of it becomes available to get into the brain. I'm not saying that's not a good idea, but if you want to get most of your vector into the brain and not lose it in the other tissues, that's why the spinal fluid is. But yeah, I think it could help people who have symptoms. That would be the goal.
Thank you, Dr. Fink. Great answers. We have a question. I saw a hand over here.
I have actually a two-part question. After speaking with many people in the audience here, that it's come to our attention that you don't have a good understudy, junior Dr. Fink. How much longer do you plan on practicing? And are you going to be trying to train someone to take over for you when you do retire?
Did you see my push-ups?
Yeah? Okay.
Did you want me to do that again?
No, not at all. I didn't know if you wanted to go retire and live the good life.
Oh, no, I don't. I'm not planning to retire. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Okay, so it's academic medicine, which means there's, I should say it's, the academic bureaucracy is a huge thing. That's a huge thing. And that's tedious. I won't deny that. But the research and the clinical practice, that's very rewarding. So I'm not planning to retire. Do I have an understudy? Yeah, sort of. Yes, I have a number of people. Yes, is the short answer.
Okay. And my second question is related to 5A patients. You were talking about going up to Michigan to have an MRI. I assume that's of the brain?
And spinal cord.
And are there many people that have already done this? Are you trying to?
No.
Do you have something in mind? What are you thinking you're going to gain from this?
Okay, so we have a research protocol that looks at that uses brain MRI and spinal cord MRI in HSP, in PLS, and in other conditions too, not just these conditions. And this is and what are we looking for? Well, what specifically we're looking at a number of things, but one of the things we're looking for is brain iron, to measure brain iron. Now, why do we care about brain iron? And people will say, oh, there's too much iron in my brain, I got to detoxify, I got to take the iron out. That is completely not the concept. Iron accumulates in the brain wherever there's been nerve injury, if you have a head injury, concussion, stroke, brain tumor, hemorrhage, any degenerative condition where the neurons have been injured, iron accumulates. It's part of the healing or the scar formation. There's iron there. It's not the concept that iron is, in these conditions, that iron is toxic. It's just a, I would say, a passive marker where there's been nerve injury. Now, there are other conditions. I don't want to get just to the small part. There are a couple other conditions where iron accumulates pathologically, but that's not what I'm talking about here. We're looking at iron as a marker of nerve injury. And so you can have an MRI scan today in your community hospital, and they can say, we think there's iron accumulation, or we don't think there's iron accumulation, kind of like yes or no. But at Michigan, they've developed the method to actually measure to a milligram or a microgram the amount of iron in different regions. That's what's different. It's not the ability to say, this is iron, there's iron present, yes or no. So we know that in PLS, some subjects show iron accumulation. Now, as I say, that's not because iron is toxic. We're not trying to remove iron. That's not the issue. But it indicates that there's been nerve injury. Okay, so, fine. We want to know how much and where, and can we measure that year to year? And does the amount of iron change? And can that be a measure of progression of the condition? And could that be used as an outcome for clinical trials? We're going to try some kind of treatment, which I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, and we're going to do a brain iron study to see about the amount of nerve injury. Of course, we'd have to study the person a year, separated in time to see if it's changing, and then do some intervention and see if that can be used as an outcome for clinical trials. So, so that's part A. Part B, why are we not doing this in HSP? We know in SPG 50, there is some brain iron accumulation. In these children that are getting this gene therapy trials that Dr. Fakari described, we know that in some of those individuals there is brain iron accumulation. Not that it's toxic. I'm not suggesting at all that the iron is toxic. It's just a marker of nerve injury. Well, we should quickly capture those subjects and measure it and see if the treatment does anything for that, right? So, what about other types of HSP? Fine. What about every type of HSP? Sure. In other words, it's just a non-specific marker of brain injury. And we're also doing spinal cord MRI, but I don't want to get into that at the moment. But my point is that we're looking at, we're trying to find a neuroimaging biomarker that would be used to judge clinical progression, so we can use that for clinical trials. That's the short answer. No, we know in some forms of HSP there is iron accumulation, but we need to measure it and see if it changes.
Okay, Dr. Fink, Greg has a question or a comment for you.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Fink, the question is, there are numerous groups like SPF dealing with upper motor neuron diseases. Is there an umbrella group where all those individual groups can share their research? And the same in regard to researchers. Is there a process where researchers are sharing information in the interest of collaboration and finding treatments and cures? There are legal protections like copyrights, patents, et cetera. To what extent is the work that all of you are doing being shared toward the interest of finding that treatment or cure?
Well, that's a good question. That's important. There is open sharing of information between investigator-initiated collaborations. So, this group works with this group, they share information. This group works with 5 groups, they all this person does the animals, this person does the gene therapy development, this person does the human trials. So there's open sharing in the group, okay? And that can be a big group. Now, let's say that there's a person in another location who's not part of that group that wants to know what's happening with that group. They'd have to call them up and say, what's happening here? And there would be conversations, and they would have access to some level of information. But there is open, free sharing between collaborations that have developed based on need of the investigators. And the need of investigators is 1, funding, 2, personnel resources, that's expertise, and 3, data. So they need funding. Investigator A needs to get a grant funded, and it's easier to collaborate with somebody else. Now you can put your preliminary data together. Now you're you have a bigger, more powerful application. There's open sharing by investigator initiated. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about how widely open is general information about upper motor neuron diseases. Let's say there are 5 people working together. Would the rest of the world view that as an information silo that they don't have access to? They might think so. I'm not saying they don't. I'm not saying they'd be wrong to think that. Within that group, there's open sharing. But that's not what you're asking. You're asking is how much information so if it's not fair to ask me because I know many investigators. I don't know all investigators. But if I called up an investigator and said, hey, what are you doing on such and such? We have something that's collaborate. I'd probably get information I wanted. So I would think it's fairly open. If somebody needed information, they could get access to this. It's not a closed door. They could say, I don't know this person. Do you know this person? Could you put me in touch with that person? Then so-and-so would write a letter. They'd have a joint Zoom meeting. They would invite him in. It's pretty open in that way. It wouldn't take long for them to gain access. But this is not just HSP. You could say this is for many, many conditions. Now, in some conditions, okay, I won't go on too long, but in some conditions, like in the development of treating childhood leukemia, this was originally designed, and I can't tell the story completely accurately, but it was the intent to make it initially distributed, crowdsourced to local physicians that they could participate in clinical trials. And so from the beginning, and there's been a complete revolution since the 70s and 80s about the success of treating childhood leukemia. You can't even imagine what it was before. And the success comes from the intent to involve everybody, access to clinical trial data, and many thousands of clinicians could participate in this and could collect data according to a systematic way and could enter data and receive updates and change their treatments and enter patients, 3 people at this clinic and 2 people at this clinic and so forth around the world. And so that is a tremendous aspect of the acceleration of treating childhood leukemia was the fact that there was intentionally no barrier to data entry, data access, and so forth. So in clinical trials. So that's a good model to follow, I think.
Okay, Dr. Fink, I think I have one question back in your corner, and then I'm going to go to the other side of the room for a half an hour or so. So I'm going to do one back here in the far corner. Oh, I think I'm going to read this for you. If a clinical trial proves to be diagnostic, why is it not then available to everyone? I go to Mass General, and they did a study that proved there is a different part of the brain that is inflamed between ALS and PLS. In fact, my neurologist was part of the study. But when I asked if I could have the scan, she said the trial was over and I couldn't have the scan.
Okay. I'm sorry that happened. I can't answer you specifically, but I would say in general, if it's an industry-studied research, then the industry controls who has access to that information because it's protected information for their drug development. And so if the industry controls the study or sponsors the study, they may say you are prohibited from discussing the study. The investigators cannot even discuss the study with somebody else and can't release any information about the study. The sponsor puts limits on. It's very common for the sponsor to put limits on that. That would be the only thing I could suggest. For you not to have direct access to that. That's probably because of the sponsor. Now, if it's an NIH study, NIH, you're required in your NIH applications to put in how are you going to share this information. You have to put in your NIH application how and when are you going to share this information. You might not share the information the day it's collected or the year it's collected, or it may be embargoed until after you've published it. It might be, but you have to put in how will data be shared. If the government's paying for it, they want to know how it's going to be shared and the timing of it. So even then, it might not be released on this first day, but there would be some plan for a government. I can't tell you about a private industry sponsored.
Okay, Dr. Fink, sorry. Did you give him a thumbs up? Fabulous. Okay, I'm going to go to the other side. I saw a hand over here. We're going to go over this way. Now all the hands come up. Okay, here we go. Everybody's waving at me.
So for my diagnosis journey, it seemed to be about 10 years of having, good doctors and physical therapists and all that kind of looking at my gait and going, And then I wouldn't be here with a diagnosis if I didn't have a physical therapist who was not even looking at my legs, do a clonus test, which kind of started this process that I wouldn't be able to have a diagnosis without like the privilege of time and money and insurance and all those sorts of things. So I say all that because my question is, how can we advocate best at a doctor's office level or a clinic level for better pathways for referrals and diagnosis for people who might be symptomatic but undiagnosed?
Well, it's a hard question. And it's hard to teach somebody something if they think they know everything. Okay? And physicians are an example of that. And so if you say, they know and the patient doesn't know. That's often the attitude. So I would say that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to inform your physician. However, that's a difficult challenge. People who to inform a physiatrist or a physical medicine doctor. Physical medicine doctors are physicians. They may be more open to learning about these conditions. When I might, just as you said, it was your physical therapist who connected you. I've heard that many times. I've also heard people diagnosed not by their physician, but by Facebook. Like where they say, well, I went on Facebook and I talked to so-and-so and so-and-so, and I eventually identified with this group, and that's what led me to the diagnosis. It was the community that led to the diagnosis. So physical therapist, if you get to refer to a physical medicine doctor, you might have greater success in bringing this to attention, But if you go to your physician and you say, I think I've got this, some physicians will be open to learning new things, and you might be lucky. So I wouldn't stop doing that approach, but it's a challenge. I don't have a short answer. What we'd like to do, what we'd like to do is we'd like to have in every pediatrician's office around the country, on their phone, well, they don't have phones anymore, But when they used to have phones, we'd like to have a 1-800-SPF number. Now, that was when we had phones. Now we say we want some kind of a QR scanner that would link up to SPF. Say, does your patient have trouble walking? Contact us. So, and it would be in the waiting room. It would be in the physician's office. Everybody would have access to, do you have trouble walking? Okay, and so it would be like it would be some screening, you know? Now, there's another side of it, and that is we want to avoid overdiagnosing or misdiagnosing, right? So that doesn't help anybody. That just adds, frustration, confusion. So we want to be, but in general, we'd like to say, if you have trouble walking at a physical therapy, do you have trouble walking? Does your doctor know why? If not, call us. Now, who's going to answer that phone? It's got to be somebody, a nurse clinician, a nurse practitioner, that can take an assessment and make a referral to around the country or around the world to get the person evaluated. That's what we'd like to have. Not just in a pediatric space, but in a genetics clinic or in a neurology clinic, internal med, all over. We'd like to have that.
Dr. Fink, our media team here in the back has had one of our virtual listeners and watchers at home has sent us this question by chat. I have HSP SPG7. I was recently told I have degeneration in the optic nerve in each eye. Generally, what should I do?
Okay, so that's a hard question. SPG7, and this is a really good question. I'm going to expand on, I'm going to just hold off on that answer for just 1 second. When we say HSP, the big problem in HSP is trouble walking. Okay, well, what about, that was okay when HSP was first described, but 100 years ago, or more than that, 120 years ago, more than that. But it was okay in the 70s when HSP was classified by, or 80s maybe, by Dr. Harding, but as a disorder that was primarily a gait disorder. The problem with HSP is that it affects walking. All right, that's the big problem. I have a problem with that statement, that the big problem with HSP is trouble walking. Why? What about a child that has learning impairment, that can't sit up, and has vision impairment? Now, they can't sit up, they have learning impairment, and they have trouble swallowing. Yes, they're not walking. What's the big problem? Is it their legs? So I don't want to say that the big problem in HSP is always trouble walking. That's not always the center issue in that person's life, is their walking. For some people, it is vision. For other people, it's talking. Some people say, I can live with the gait disturbance, but the reason I had to retire was I couldn't speak clearly. And so for that person, the speech is the big issue. I'm not minimizing when they have coexisting symptoms, I'm not ignoring that. But for some people, the big clinical issue is not walking. Because HSP has now grown to be such, a diverse group of conditions, for some people, the problem is intellectual impairment in childhood due to an HSP gene mutation that only mildly affects their walking. But it's called HSP because it has an HSP gene mutation that in other people affects walking. So anyways, having said all that, SPG7 is an example of HSP that can affect the body in many different ways. This is not unique, but it's to SPG7, but SPG7 is a good example of this. It can cause peripheral neuropathy. That peripheral neuropathy can be the main problem for that person. It can be numbness, loss of sensation, balance impairment. It can be largely peripheral neuropathy, not spasticity. Now, for other people, it can be spasticity only in their legs. For other people, it can be spasticity and neuropathy. Okay. For other people, it can be Parkinson's. For some people, it can be Parkinson's and neuropathy and spasticity. Or Parkinson's and spasticity. Various combinations. For some people, it can cause optic neuritis. Now, it's highly variable. SPG7 can be highly variable. It can affect speech, can affect the hands. Does it always affect speech? Does it always affect the hands? No, it can. So it can be highly variable. But this person asked about the vision impairment, optic neuritis in SPG7, and that can occur. And right now we don't have a treatment for that, but that would be an approach potentially for a gene therapy. When gene therapy is developed, that would be an approach, that might be an approach to treating that. Now, I would also say that SPG7 is fairly far along on developing drugs that work to reduce that. So there are, I'm aware of, I've attended a couple of lectures on drug development for SPG7. It's not in clinical practice today, but there are some candidate drugs that are being tried in animal models for SPG7 that seem to have benefit. Or actually, it was in a stem cell model, I believe, that seemed to have benefit, drug development. So, what can be done today for SPG7? For the eye problem, I'm not sure. I don't know of a treatment today, but I do know that there's emerging drug trials, that there are a couple of drugs that have shown promise for SPG7 to reduce the rate of nerve degeneration, and that would be a good target for that. So I would say there's reason for optimism in the next couple of years to see emerging drug treatments for SPG7 eye disease.
Great, Dr. Fink, thank you very much. I think I saw some hands on this side of the room earlier. There's one right in my view. We're going to work this side for a while. Here you go, sir.
Dr. Fink, I'm one of the 30% that don't have a specific diagnosis, and I've asked you this question in the past. From the talks that we heard in the last couple days, it sounds like it's relatively important, not only for me, but for the whole community, to know what people have. So should people think about getting these, what we call total genome analysis in that situation? I've been tested by Invitae and at the NIH, and so I've had 60 to 70 different genes tested, all negative. And so how should people think about that as they approach that question?
Okay, so in your question you used, it's important to you and it's important to others to know. Okay, so I'm going to answer that part of this first, or talk about that. How and why is it important to know? Why do we care? Well, for some individuals, it is very unsettling to not have a laboratory confirmation for something that's life-changing. What's wrong with my walking? Well, you go to some person and they say, well, in my opinion, and then you go to somebody else and they say, well, we didn't find anything else, so it's probably, and you go to somebody else and they say, well, what did they say? Well, if they said something and they're smart, they probably are right. So here's what it probably is. And you walk away from this and you say, well, they think. Well, who are they? They don't know. What is it that would bring resolution or bring this, end what we call a diagnostic odyssey? It's for some people, that's very unsettling. Now, other people, it's not so unsettling. For example, let's say there's a grandmother that has something, and if you pass it on to her son, and the son passed it on to his son, and that son passed it on to his daughter, and they say, okay, and there's a big family history, and everybody knows everybody, their uncle, their cousin, so everybody has it, not everybody has it, but I mean, it's well known what is in the family, okay? So if you say, we don't know the gene that causes, and they say, I don't care, I know it's a condition that runs in my family, you're going to tell me it's type 99 or type 98. What does that matter? You don't have a treatment. Why don't you call me when you have a treatment? If you have a treatment for 99 but not for 98, well, then I'll get tested and you can tell me if it works, right? So for some people, it's very unsettling not to know the exact molecular diagnosis. For other people, it's not so unsettling. So you say how it's important for people who don't have a diagnosis. It's not important for everybody. Now, is it important to get treatment? Not so much, because we don't have treatment. And you say, well, yeah, but if I knew the type, well, then I would be ready to get in a clinical trial. Okay, well, we don't have very many clinical trials that are recruiting only for a certain type. And in my opinion, the trial should do the testing to see if you have that type. Do you see what I mean? If they say the entry criteria for this trial is that you have to have type 7, okay, well then I would hope that they would, unless they have too many people with type 7, they don't need to pay for the testing themselves, but they might be doing testing as part of the trial criteria. Well, they probably wouldn't. They'd probably just review your records and then do testing to confirm, but that's a separate discussion. But so would knowing give you access to a clinical trial? It might. We don't have a lot of clinical trials. Like Darius said the other day, the number of clinical trials in the United States for intervention, not for natural history or study or skin biopsies, but for intervention, for drug trials, is 1 so far. So would knowing accelerate your entry into clinical trials? Well, first we got to accelerate the clinical trials. Okay, having said all that, for some people it's important to know. And I'm not underestimating that, because to get a laboratory confirmation can be not necessarily reassuring, but it does not stop the questions. If you get a laboratory diagnosis, eventually you think, well, now I've answered that question. And then 2 days later, the question is, well, now what do I do about it? It doesn't stop the questions, it just changes the topic from what is it to what can I do about it. And but it is 30%. In some studies, it's 40% don't have a genetic diagnosis. And we're working on that. 25 years ago, it was almost none. Almost, I don't know, 25 years ago, probably, I can't remember exactly, but maybe there were 3 genes that could be tested. So mostly we didn't know. But now we can test for 69 genes or more. And exome sequencing can test many, many more genes. 1,000, all of the genes in principle, 28,000. But even so, anyway, is it valuable to know? It depends. I don't know if it's medically necessary to know, but it can be very helpful to the... If a person didn't have the knowledge, and I talked this whole speech, and I said, do you want to know? And they said, yeah, it's important for me to know. I said, okay, well, they said, would it be important for me as a clinician for you to have that knowledge? I said, well, if I knew, then I would look for clinical trials, or I would look for experimental treatments, so it would inform our conversation. Now, so there's limits on genetic testing. There's the Invitae panel, 69 genes. Medical neurogenetics, what they call LabCorp, tests, I think, 360 genes, more, for $1,800. Invitae is $2,500. I'm sorry. LabCorp is $1,800. Invitae is $250. But then there's exome sequencing that tests 28,000 genes. But none of these, whether it's the exome sequencing or the panel, none of them are perfect. Even with all the testing we can do today, we still have this gap of about 35 plus 40% gap where we don't have testing. Even with whole genome sequencing. There's whole exome, there's whole genome. Okay, so I'm going to draw something on here. I'm grateful to Norma for providing this. And I almost didn't use it, but I want to use it. So, I don't know if you can see this. Let's see. if we take all of the chromosomes together, there are 23 chromosomes. And, well, we have pairs of chromosomes, 22 chromosomes, and an X and Y. And so, if we take all of the chromosomes, each chromosome is a linear piece of DNA, long. If we took all of the DNA we have from each chromosome and joined it together, so now we have one continuous piece of DNA, okay? If we did, one continuous thread. Actually, I'm telling you, the DNA is divided into chromosomes, so it doesn't exist as a continuous thread. But if you took all those chromosomes and you stuck them together and you looked at that DNA molecule, it would be about 5.5 feet long. It's a long linear molecule. And as I say, they're broken up into chromosomes, so it's separate ones, but collectively it's 5.5 feet of a string of a chemical, okay? Just bear that in mind. Now, if we took all of the genetic information and we made it down here as all the genetic information strung together, okay? That's all your genetic information. We call that the genome. That's the genome, okay? Now, half of that genome, this is the genome. Half of that genome is repetitive sequences that occur thousands, sometimes 50,000 times. A piece of a DNA sequence that occurs over and over and over, thousands of times. And there are thousands of different sequences that become repetitive. So much, I'm not saying it's junk. I'm not saying it's of no consequence. It is valuable, but it's highly repetitive DNA that sometimes does important things. So about half of the total genetic information is repetitive. What proportion of our genome encodes proteins? Okay? This much. This is like less than 3% of the total genome encodes proteins. Okay? Now, there are other parts here, maybe up to 20%, I don't know, in here someplace, that, so these are what we call the exons that give rise to protein sequences. This gives rise to a protein sequence. I don't know if you can see it from the distance, but this gives rise to the protein sequence. This is the one, approximately 3%. This part here contains introns, I know this is technical, and regulatory regions that regulate these. Okay? So, anyway, so these are also involved in giving this, but the actual protein encoding regions is less than 3%. Okay? This is if you took all the DNA together. Now, so it's interesting how you ask a question and I pivot it to a genetic discussion. I'm not ignoring your question. So here we have, here we have a gene. Let's say this is the gene for spastin. Okay? Well, spastin, the gene, this is DNA. It's broken up into parts of the gene that contribute to the amino acid. This is the gene. This is the protein. And the protein is a sequence of amino acids okay? So this is DNA in the gene, and the protein is a sequence of amino acids. And this part of the gene gives rise to says, put in this these amino acids, and this part of the gene says put in these amino acids, and this part says put in these amino acids. But these are what we call the intervening sequences. Intervening sequences. The other word for intervening sequences are introns. And these part of the gene coding things are called the exons. These are exon, exon, exon. The exons are interrupted by introns, and it's the exons that give rise to the protein, that specify the protein. Why am I telling you that? Only because I mentioned that up in here, that this exons collectively are about 3% of the whole genome, and the introns and the regulatory parts of the gene are in this part here, maybe 20% of the whole chromosome. If you have genetic testing where they do exome sequencing, whole exome sequencing, they're sequencing this. They're sequencing all of the exomes of all of the genes that collectively make up about 3% of your total DNA. 28,000 genes, protein encoding genes, collectively make the exons. That's what the whole exome sequencing is, this 3%. Okay? That's about $2,000, $1,800. Oh, one company I know Invitae, I think, does it for $1,250. I don't endorse any companies, and I don't have any conflict of interest, but I'm just talking about in general terms. Then a person can have whole genome sequencing. Whole genome sequencing is not whole exome sequencing. Whole exome sequencing does this. Whole genome sequencing does this. Okay? So you can do whole exome sequencing. You're not sequencing all of your DNA. You're sequencing all the exomes, which is the protein encoding parts. Okay? But you're not doing all of this, which is the regulatory parts. So you could have problems with the regulation of a gene, right? But you're not sequencing. And what's now being discussed, Dr. Zuckner's discussed this, and other people, is to do what we call long-range sequencing, which would be sequencing not just exomes, but deep into the intron regions, to get more information. Maybe there could be a mutation in the regulatory regions. So we know that just sequencing this region here, we don't find mutations in about 30 or 40%. But I recognize, I'm only drawing this up here to illustrate that that's not all of your DNA that we're studying. That's just a piece of the DNA.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fink, for that lesson. We really appreciate that. I've got one more question on this side of the room. I saw a hand up here. We're going to do a quick one here, and then I'll go to the other side.
Thank you. While I was here, I learned about, for the first time, because we're new at this, SPG1, SPG2, that they were named as the order of when the HSP was
identified,
discovered, or when it was identified. So my son has a new one,
right? And
do they assign an SPG to that? How does that work? I was just curious.
Not so much anymore.
Okay, so it just now becomes just that name?
They could. We could together report it as a new number. There are probably, I don't know off the top of my head, I could look this up afterwards and tell you, among the 90 plus types of HSP, there are probably gene numbers for 80 something types. There are many types that don't have numbers. So not all types have numbers because people didn't bother with that anymore.
No, not all have an SPG number.
Yeah, they don't all have an SPG number.
Oh, okay. I just noticed here everybody had an SPG number.
No, that's, and the reason for that is a couple, is that it was more important when there were fewer numbers. Like we found one, now we've got two, now we got three, now we got four, and at a time when you could recite up to 10 or 11 it was valuable. But now when you got to 77 or 78, and it's too much, the numbers aren't as relevant as the name of the gene.
Okay.
The number, what was numbered was not the gene, but it was the chromosome location. We have the first chromosome location, not the chromosome. I don't want to tell you it was on chromosome, not saying chromosome, SPG1 was on chromosome 1, no. SPG1 is on the X chromosome. SPG2 is on the X chromosome, and so forth. SPG3 is on the chromosome 14. The point is that the number does not correspond to which chromosome. It just depends on the order in which the chromosome was identified as containing an HSP gene. People aren't doing that anymore. After the gene, it's not necessary. It's not necessary.
Okay. And then also, I noticed that some say it's like dominant or recessive. What does necessarily that mean? Like, if you're dominant or recessive, or how do you know if you're dominant or recessive?
Okay, good question. So this is a hard question. It's like, this is a fundamental question. You'd think we would know this. But here's the deal. Dominant and recessive have to do with, I'll give you two answers here. Dominant means that the condition is passed from one parent to a child. Okay? So the parent has the condition. As soon as I tell you this, I'm going to give you examples where this is not the case. So, okay? So dominant means a parent has the condition and they can pass it to a child. Dominant also means that the condition can be passed from a mother to a child of either sex and from a father to a child of either sex. So dominant means that it can be passed from one parent to a child. And it can be inherited from either parent and passed to a child of either sex. Okay? That's dominant. Now there's holes in what I just told you. So for example, what about new mutations? There's a lot of people here with SPG4 that have a new mutation. SPG4 is a dominant type, but they're the first person to ever have this mutation. So they didn't actually inherit it from their parents who had it, right? They are the first person to have the mutations have to begin someplace.
Is that de novo? Or
That's de novo, yeah.
De novo.
They're the first, so they didn't their parents don't have it, they have it. So when I say dominant, one parent passes it on to a child, except in the case where and there are other reasons for this, but for example, where it's a de novo mutation. Now the parent doesn't have it. However, the child who has this condition, now they become a parent, they can pass it on to their child. Okay, so that's dominant.
So SPG4 is dominant, and it's considered dominant even though there are some who don't have that dominant component. It's de novo. They don't call it.
No. SPG4 is a dominant type of HSP. And if your parents didn't have it and the person is a new mutation, okay, they have a dominant condition and they can pass it on to their children.
Oh, I gotcha.
In other words, if they inherited it, that's fine. But if they didn't inherit it and it just developed during the process of egg formation or sperm formation, then they now have that dominant mutation. They can pass it on to their children, and each child has a 50% risk of inheriting it, that mutation. So that's dominant. Recessive is that the child gets that both parents are carriers, but neither parent is affected. So they are what we call silent carriers. They have the mutation, but they don't have any symptoms, and the child only gets the condition, develops the condition, if they inherit the mutation from two parents. Okay? So if it's recessive, the child, okay, so maybe I'll write this on the board. Now there's going to be a test. So I don't know if you can see, I'll turn this, hang on. I'm turning it to, maybe everybody can see, but can you see, maybe that's not fair. How's this? Can you see where you are? okay? Well, I want to make it, we're all about inclusivity. So I'll get out of the way in a second. But here's a father, here's a mother. Squares are for the father, and the squares are for males, and circles are for females. Why? Why is this male, is the genetic symbol square for male and the circle for female? Because this was supposed to be the mirror of Venus, and this was supposed to be the shield of Mars. Okay, I didn't make this up. Trust me. This is like old, I think this was Mars' shield. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think it's Mars' shield and the mirror of Venus. Anyways, so you can look it up. At any rate, so square is male, circle is female. Colored in means the person is affected, has a condition. Here's a male, here's a son who has the condition, and a daughter who doesn't have the condition. This son gets married. Son gets married, and also these symbols are biologic sex. They have nothing to do with gender identity. These are biologic sex, and biologic sex has to do with the presence of the X and Y chromosomes. So we're only talking about biologic sex on these symbols. So now, this person has, and here's a triangle, two triangles. A triangle, oops, I can't draw it like this. Or a diamond, I guess, diamond. Diamond means the sex is not specified. That's just what it means. So we have a male who has a condition, and he has a son who has the condition, and then they have two children that I didn't say male or female. And this is a dominant condition passed from one person to the son. What's the risk that this person, number one, will develop the condition? How much? 50%. Because if it's a dominant condition, he had a 50% chance of inheriting the condition. Now he's got the condition. We know he has the condition. So what's the chance he'll pass it on to this person? 50%. But let's say this person doesn't develop the condition. What's the chance that this person will get it? 50%. Doesn't matter if he has 100 children. If he has 100 children, HSP is not the problem. Well, I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm just recognizing that that's a lot of children. So, anyway, so it doesn't matter how many children, it doesn't matter if this person's affected or not, every child has a 50% risk, independent of what happened before. You know, if you flip a coin and it's heads, that doesn't mean the next time will be tails. You get 3 heads in a row doesn't mean you're due for a tails. Every time you flip the coin, it's a 50% chance. On average, that's an average. Okay, so dominant, one parent passes it on to a male or female, and that person can pass it on. Each time is a 50% risk, okay? Now that's dominant. Now if this person, let's say this person was adopted and didn't know their parents. We don't know anything about it. Or let's say we know their parents and neither parent has the gene mutation, and this is a de novo mutation. The chance that they can pass on that de novo mutation it pass on the condition for a de novo dominant mutation is 50%. Now, contrast that with recessive. Recessive, here's a male, and he's a carrier, and he's not affected. He's a carrier, and a female, and she's not affected, but she's a carrier, and they have let's say a daughter, and the daughter inherits the father's mutant gene and the mother's mutant gene, and she has a sister, it could be a brother, doesn't matter, and the sister inherits the father's normal gene but the mother's mutant gene. And then they have a brother who who inherits only the normal copies from each parent, but doesn't inherit the abnormal copies from either parent. Okay? So, this is a recessive. Neither parent is affected. If the parents pass on the mutant gene, if the child inherits the mutant gene from each parent, they have 2 copies of the mutant gene, they don't have any copies of the normal gene, they develop the condition. Okay? And if the child inherits the mutant gene from just one parent, then they're a carrier just like their parent. They can pass on the carrier state, but the carriers don't have symptoms. However, if this daughter marries another carrier, okay, happens to meet a carrier, and this person's a carrier, well now, if 2 carriers meet, like if 2 carriers met, then their child could have it. Okay? So, that's recessive. Now, got all that? But what I'm going to tell you is going to be kind of mind expanding. Or X-linked. There's another one, there's a third one, it's X-linked. And there's even a fourth one, mitochondrial. But let's just talk about X.
I was just curious, I was just thinking about my son because we don't know. Is he going to be? Is there a dominant thing and a recessive for him?
Well, well, I'm getting to that. Oh no, but my point is that besides dominant and recessive, there's also X-linked. That's for genes that are on the X chromosome. And there are several types of HSP that are X-linked. And for completeness sake, there's a mitochondrial form of HSP, which is only passed on from mothers. If a mother has the condition, this is a rare type of HSP. I think there's only 1 or maybe 2 examples. And it's only passed on from mothers. Mother has the condition. If a father had the condition, in other words, if a mother passed it on to her son, the son can't pass it on. But I want to talk about that's mitochondrial. We're talking about dominant recessive now. But what I want to mention is this. I mean, we can have that conversation, but I think people will be falling asleep pretty soon. Maybe already. But the point I'm getting at is that within the 100 or 90-something types of HSP, they're all classified as dominant or recessive. But 6 of them, at least 6 of them, are both dominant and recessive. That's the problem. The majority of types of HSP are either dominant or recessive. But some types of HSP can be dominant and can be recessive. And that's complicated. And so it's complicated. So for example, SPG7, which is probably the most common form of recessively inherited HSP, sometimes is dominantly inherited. SPG11, which is a fairly common form of HSP, sometimes is dominantly inherited. Recessively inherited is usual, sometimes is dominantly inherited. And there are half a dozen types of HSP total. And we have to be careful about newly, and this, I'm speaking specifically about the RAB1A, we have to be specifically careful about overstating what we know. If we have a new recessive type of HSP, is that always recessive? Is it sometimes dominant? I can't tell you. If it's described in 2 people, that's not enough. So the point is, there's dominant, there's recessive, and then there are half a dozen types that at least that number is going to grow that can be dominant or recessive.
Hey, Dr. Fink, that is fantastic information, and I know there's going to be a quiz on that later, so I hope everybody took good notes, because we're going to do it. I'm going to come over to this side and get a question over here. We're starting to get into a little time crunch, because our day is coming to an end quickly, and we have a lot of people that have to fly all the way around the world to get home sometime today. So we got a question over here, Dr. Fink.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You were talking about growing community.
Yeah.
And so this time next year, in addition to money and
humans, more members, what would be indicators that the community had grown stronger? And also, what can we do to support you?
Well, what the indicators of community growth are that we need to meet more than once a year, that we can't fit into a single hotel, that there are, I mean, I don't know. This is a board issue, but for example, if we learn that there are 600 people that want to come but can't come because it's here and it's this time, it's this location, we say, well, we need to expand our ability. That would be an indicator that we're outgrowing that this model is. I mean, there are more people participating in this virtually, so that numbers are bigger than what they seem. So for example, I meet with people once a month, except July and August, or if in general, once a month, HSP, PLS. Then in addition to that, there's the foundation has its SPF talks, and then there are state ambassadors that are meeting. One indicator would be that we're outgrowing that we need to meet twice a month, that we need to have, so in other words, if people say, we need to meet more often, and the ambassadors are keeping logs of who's coming and how often they're meeting, and now, I mean, there are a lot of people who are from Texas, for instance. Maybe there needs to be every 3 months a small meeting, and not so small, in Texas, in various parts of Texas, or in California, some big state, you know. So it would be that the indicators that we need that we need to grow or that we are growing would be the number of times we need to get together. That's one. Support. That's this is not about me getting support. So I don't want to discuss that, but people can support the foundation. This is a foundation event, and the foundation, Jim and Greg and everybody can help you, raise support, and that's critical. We wouldn't be here without that. Yes.
Dr. Fink, let me jump into that. That's a great question, and I want to share some things with you. We keep up constantly with how many new members are joining the foundation and registering on the website. And we know that we don't have near the estimated numbers of people across the country, we don't have near all of them in our database on our website. Why is that important? Because the way we communicate with you are through what we call e-blast. If you're registered with us, you get emails, and sometimes you may get more than you like, but we're trying to get the word out about many different things. SPF talks happen periodically when there are subjects and times of things that need to be discussed. We hope you will join us in those. We try to communicate anywhere we can, but you guys are an important part of this. Why? You may know other people that have HSP or PLS, and for some reason, they've chosen not to register. Well, if we don't know they're out there, we can't work with them. We need to build the numbers for database purposes, for support purposes. So if you know other folks that are affected and you deal with them social media, you deal with them email, please encourage them to register so we know who they are and we can get information to them as we build this. We're excited as a foundation to know that we're on track right now this year to have twice as many new members as we had last year. And so, but we've got to keep growing. We're not only doing that in this country, but we're connecting, as we said earlier, with Euro HSP, communities in Brazil and other parts of the world. So help us build that by telling your friends, participating in the SPF talks. We need your involvement to help build.
To kind of tag along with that, excuse me, I didn't know I was loud. You guys remember Tom talking to us about CPATH yesterday? I think it was yesterday. So we've been working with them for the past several months to try to find out more about how we can get organized with the NIH and FDA and so forth. They themselves looked at all the organizations through the whole world, HSP, PLS organizations, and they came to us and said that we are the most organized foundation organization in the world. So be happy to know that you're part of the most organized group, and we're dedicated to move forward. So thank you for coming.
Yes,
Dr.
sir.
Fink, I have a question. I wanted to get your opinion on a FDA approval process. You know, when you were a young doctor, you learn all about drugs. Most of the drugs in this country are done through large trials where you have a large sample size, randomized, placebo, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. Recently, a company called Amylyx had a new product. Everyone was excited about it. It went through the process, and it was approved through a phase 2 process. And then they had to meet a confirmatory trial to keep it on. They didn't make it. The drug was withdrawn from the market. So because PLS and HSP are so rare and we don't have the numbers, do you think that's going to hurt us in the future of having to go through a long phase 3
No, I
trial?
don't. No, I don't.
Okay.
No, because the FDA is, so back 30 years ago, there was this Orphan Drug Act in Congress. And since then, but especially now in the past 5 or 10 years, the FDA is very sensitive to this issue and about treating ultra rare. There's rare, and by rare, the criteria for rare means it affects less than 1% of the population. So that's less than 1 in 100, or I don't know if it's 1 in 100 or less than 100, but you know, by that criteria, there are more than 1 million people in Michigan that have a rare disorder. 1 million people in Michigan that have a rare disorder by the definition of Huntington's, cystic fibrosis, spinocerebellar ataxia, HSP, PLS. All of these are less than 1%. But collectively, it's 1 million people just in Michigan. So, my point is that the FDA has developed new guidelines for reviewing applications that cannot ever be trialed in that old model system where you have 100 people, 200 people with the condition and 200 people who don't have the condition and so forth. No, they have different mechanisms. For example, what they call N of 1, where they study they study one person and then, on the drug and then, or off the drug and then on the drug and then off the drug. And a series of you serve as your own control. There's untreated, treated, and post-treatment. That is, off, on, or they can do it several times, whatever. And the number of people that are needed for that kind of trial design, and there are other kinds of trial designs besides that one, but so the FDA has adopted committees that review these kinds of applications and different policies and different ways of scoring them. So, for example, in the case of Ampyra, that has been approved for use in multiple sclerosis, and we also use it, although insurance usually doesn't pay, but we use another form of it in PLS and HSP sometimes. Anyway, Ampyra, the scoring criteria for Ampyra, most people who try it with multiple sclerosis do not benefit. Okay? 90% or something like that, a big number, show no benefit at all. But the FDA, in that case, they allowed the application they took all that data, but they also looked at, among the people who responded, how many people had a big response. Okay? So they looked at a separate set of, among the 10% or so, 15%, whatever it was, among the responders, how many had a small, medium, and big response. And so, in that subgroup of the whole 90, if you looked at the whole group of 100, well, you wouldn't be able to see the people who responded. But if you only looked at the people who responded, among the responders, there were some people with significant benefit. So my point is, it's not only the trial design that the FDA has adopted for rare conditions, it's also the outcomes that are scored for how they judge effectiveness that the FDA is adopting. So the FDA is very aware of this, and not yeah. So do I think that it's a barrier that these are rare conditions? No, I don't. I think we have to. And SPF CERN is very much aware of this, about what do we need to get FDA approval and how do we design our preclinical studies, our pre-trial studies, so that we're on track to getting what the FDA requires. And this is something that's in evolution, it's something that's in development, but we are very much aware of what the FDA, like for example, does every type of HSP need an animal model? Not necessarily. FDA doesn't require that. They need some kind of proof that the drug shows efficacy in something. It can't just be somebody's idea. But what if the animals don't develop the symptoms? Is that a barrier for the use of that? No. The FDA, there's a variety of animal models, but animal models may not always be required, may not be mandatory. So the FDA we want to always make the FDA very rigorous because we want to ensure safety. That's a very important gatekeeper or screener because safety is key. We don't want to make anything worse. We also don't want it to be a barrier to trials. So we want, the brakes are a very important part of your car. You wouldn't think of having a car that would only go fast. It'd be very dangerous. But we don't want it to be that the brakes are on all the time that you can never go anywhere. So we have to be very careful about that. Regulatory process is essential for safety. And also to know if it's not helping, we don't want to use it. So I don't think it's a barrier, not at all.
Great, Dr. Fink. Thank you very much. We've got time for one real quick, short question, and then we're going to send you guys on your way. Here we go.
Hey, Dr. Fink. So I have PLS, and one of the things that we talk about a lot is whether or not we should attend ALS clinics. And so my question for you is, if we do attend ALS clinics, does that benefit your research at all? Is that connected? Is it something you recommend? What's your thoughts on that?
This is a difficult question. These are all difficult questions. If you go to a PLS clinic, to go to an ALS clinic, that does not, I would imagine that's psychologically challenging because, here we make a very clear distinction between ALS and PLS, and now you're going to an ALS clinic, and on the drive and parking and going home, you were just steeped in do I really have a form of ALS or not? I would think that's not for you necessarily, I don't know. But that's not everybody wants to go to an ALS clinic because, and the other part is, there are many physicians in the ALS clinic that consider PLS, well, it's really all ALS. And that's not this opinion. That's not my opinion. And I can't speak for Dr. Mitsumoto, who's an expert in PLS, but it's not the consensus. Maybe I could, I suppose. He would let me know if I said something wrong. But it's not the consensus. There is PLS, there is HSP, there is ALS. There are some overlaps, okay, occasionally. But PLS and ALS are not the same condition. Now, But it is true that people with ALS who go to an ALS clinic, what they call a multidisciplinary ALS clinic, that is one-stop shopping, has respiratory care, physical therapy, bracing, drug trials, all this diagnostic EMG and things. So it's all together that the quality of life and survival is in ALS is better in people who go to a multidisciplinary ALS clinic than people who don't. Now that's wrapped up in that is all about access to who gets to go to this kind of clinic, and there's all kinds of factors that influence the accessibility of those clinics. But anyway, they do deliver value in their care. And I think if it's available to a person with PLS, then it might be a good place to go to get swallowing studies, physical therapy recommendations. These are kind of generic for people that have those symptoms. So I'm not saying it's not necessary to go for except that it's, what we would like to have would be a multidisciplinary PLS clinic, okay? A multidisciplinary PLS clinic, all right? Fine. Until we do, we might use the services of a multidisciplinary ALS clinic, recognizing that it's, not everybody wants to go there for a variety of personal reasons, and I respect that, and not all the physicians in those clinics have the same understanding about PLS that we are trying to educate. Yeah, I mean, that's what I would say.
And does the data that they collect, though, does it help with research for
That's
PLS?
that's a separate issue, because if they're connected, if you went to an ALS clinic, if you went to an ALS clinic that also saw individuals with PLS, and they were doing studies, would it help me? It wouldn't help me directly unless I was connected with those investigators and we were working together. And it might in the future. And that's a good idea, because, like, we might say, well, we want to capture, like, for instance, if I needed more people with PLS to participate in research, and I need 10 people tomorrow for a study, I might call up the people in the ALS clinic and say, do you know anybody? I don't think I would, because I know a lot of people. But I mean, let's say that, if I wanted to be in Ann Arbor, I might. So there are clearly some people in the ALS clinic that have PLS, and we might share data. Sure, I don't think that's exactly the answer to your question, but okay.
Okay, everybody. Hey, great work, everybody. Thanks for the great questions. Thank Dr. Fink for all of his great work. We're going to wrap this up from Tampa for everybody here. Thank you for being a part of the Spastic Paraplegia Foundation and coming to this annual conference. We don't know where we're going to be in 2025, but we'll let you know. So everybody, be safe, be strong, be happy, take it easy. And this great humidity, this is a nice place to visit. I don't know if it's for me to live here.
If you have a question about what we talked about.
But one of these days, maybe I will. Anyway, everybody, we're signing off from Tampa. We'll see you in 2025.